Welcome back. Singapore will soon have a bigger hand in helping develop smart cities abroad. Research Institute STAR and infrastructure consultancy Surbana Jurong have agreed to work together to develop digital solutions.
The tie-up is expected to help Surbana Jurong bid more competitively for smart cities projects. Now, the agencies will focus on solutions for urban planning, building design and operations and maintenance as well. The deal will enable local SMEs licensed by A-STAR to deploy their technologies in Surbana Jurong's projects.
Surbana Jurong will also help other local firms in its value chain gain inroads into its overseas markets. And just over the weekend, it announced that it would be the master planner of a digital economy hub on the Indonesian island of Batam.
Moving forward, it says it will focus on developing countries like India as well as those in Africa.
A lot of these countries are still developing and there are vast amount of infrastructure that needs to be put in. We are chasing projects that are involving large tracts of land where we can overlay a lot of new innovations and new technologies. It's much easier because you really don't have existing infrastructure. So everything needs to be built up from ground zero.
Since these models and tools that we have built are largely quite universal, so the SMEs can actually then apply it to many different situations all across the world. The SMEs could further develop it and customize them to their particular situations.
The Agency for Science, Technology and Research, A-STAR, and urban infrastructure consultancy Surbana Jurong are co-developing digital solutions as part of Singapore's push towards becoming a smart nation. Now, 3 key areas that they'll be looking at: planning of cities, residential towns and industrial parks, design and simulation of buildings, as well as services for efficient and sustainable operations and maintenance.
Now, for more on this, we're joined by Wong Heang Fine, Group CEO of Surbana Jurong, and Professor Alfred Huan, Executive Director of A-STAR's Urban and Green Tech Office. Alfred, I'll come to you first. We hear a lot of sort of buzzwords when we talk about sort of smart cities, like 5G, driverless cars, and we've seen sort of evidence of Singapore moving in that direction as well. How far along is Singapore in sort of the push to be sort of a leader in smart cities?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us. I think for a smart city to operate, it needs several ingredients: people who are literate in technology, good infrastructure, hardware, software, and receptacles where you can store the data, good connectivity. And I think on these 3 fronts, we do very well. And the most important thing, I think, is that we have a government that takes the lead, putting services online and encouraging more productivity and efficiencies in what we do. And I think on these 3 fronts, Singapore is progressing really well, and we're optimistic that we will be there.
Heang Fine, so, 3 key areas have been identified for this partnership, right? So we were mentioned there just now: planning of cities, residential towns, industrial parks, design simulation buildings, services for efficient and sustainable operations and maintenance. So why were these areas specifically chosen, though?
Well, these 3 areas are really the core expertise of Surbana Jurong in planning, next generation of new cities and township, as well as industrial park, as well as design and engineering of new generation of infrastructure facilities, including management of some of these facilities down the road. And going forward, digital technology is going to be our key focus in trying to integrate everything we do from design all the way down to management.
And is there a reason why, as Singapore sort of continues on this journey, it seems there's a very keen push to also get involved in the development of other cities and other hubs outside of Singapore? Is that for a sort of a learning process, or is that more of an expansion of what Singapore's capabilities are?
Well, one of the things that we are trying to do is really to develop cities and industrial estates or infrastructure facilities by leveraging on what we do best here in Singapore. In that process involve a lot of our local SMEs. So that's a platform that we would like to use to try and leverage on what we have here in Singapore.
And with that regard, then, is Singapore seen as a leader in many of these fields?
Yes, indeed. I think both our homegrown talent have come up with solutions that are very applicable. And of course, Singapore is also making use of its constraints of being small and lack of resources. And as we solve these problems for ourselves, we will be able to export them and use them in other places.
So are these some of the gaps that you see at the moment that, you know, in trying to be a smart city? What are some of the gaps?
Well, I think a smart city will also need lots of sensors being deployed, where, you know, buildings can understand, where you understand the health of a building, infrastructure, for instance, and how do you deal with transport congestion. I think these are some of the problems that plague a lot of big cities, and Singapore is no different. And so on many areas, we should still be working on. And most crucially, as we look ahead, sustainability of these solutions will have to play a big part, largely because there's a lot of discussion about carbon emissions, and Singapore will equally be affected once we sign up to it.
You talked a bit about how sort of the importance of the role that the government plays in sort of helping sort of lay the groundwork for a lot of these things. Are you finding, as you sort of look beyond Singapore's shores, that foreign governments as well are also moving at the same pace as the private sector to sort of match this sort of development?
Well, I think in all the countries, today, you know, we operate in 40 countries. In all the countries that we operate, you know, there's a really conscious effort by both government and also private sector to do good, yeah, for the community. And that is really something that I think is it's a great force moving forward, yeah. Both private sector and government thinking alike in building sustainable type of developments, you know, whether it's urban or whether it's infrastructure.
Right. So saying that, Alfred, you know, what kind of support will A-STAR be giving local enterprises like Surbana Jurong to enhance their global competitiveness?
Well, first of all, we are happy to work with a company like Surbana Jurong because of its innovativeness. And what A-STAR has are specific solutions, solutions that we have developed under smart manufacturing. And we're just importing them over to the built environment. Some of these will include digitalization, it will include environmental modeling, transport network modeling, machine learning, data analytics. These are the many things that we have picked up, you know, in the areas of manufacturing, and we see a lot of use in infrastructure and built environment.
All right. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in and speaking to us tonight. We've been speaking with Wong Heang Fine, Group CEO of Surbana Jurong, and Professor Alfred Huan, Executive Director of A-STAR's Urban and Green Tech Office.